Well, howdy, partner. Do you like cowboys? Vampires? Vague steampunk overtones? Well, if you answered yes, I think I've got a game for you. Let's take a step back in time to 2005 and enter the world of Darkwatch, Curse of the West. Developed by High Moon Studios and published in North America by Capcom for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox consoles. I'll be taking a look at the Xbox version here. Darkwatch is one of those games I vaguely remember from back in the day, but being a kid and having no money kind of slipped through the cracks for me until years later when I found a copy and picked it up, where it sat for several more years until I finally played it the other day. So this is actually a fresh experience for me and my genuine initial reactions to it, untainted by nostalgia. I won't go too deep into it, lest the rambling intro bit go on for way too long. You can skim Wikipedia like I did for further details, but basically the initial concept of the game was very different and a lot more lighthearted, with a bumbling comic relief sort of protagonist, but gradually grew darker and darker, described by lead designer Paul O'Connor as Blade meets Men in Black in the Old West, and then getting even darker as the design for the protagonist was completed. Darkwatch takes place in the Arizona Territory in 1876. You play as Jericho Cross, an outlaw gunslinger out to pull off one last train robbery. After working your way through the train, which acts as a very basic tutorial, you get to the treasure, only to find out that this isn't a normal train. It's owned by the vampire hunting order called the Darkwatch, and you've just released an extremely powerful vampire demon named Lazarus who promptly bites you, and now you're turning into a vampire. Oops. From here it's an action-packed romp through the Old West, fighting your way to the Darkwatch Citadel, passing a series of trials to prove yourself as an ally to the Darkwatch leader, Clay Cartwright, who's highly reluctant to have a vampire on their side, and working towards the goal of defeating Lazarus and his army of undead. The Darkwatch Citadel acts as sort of a freely explorable hub area, and you can choose from a series of missions in any order you wish, and choose different loadouts from the weapon supplier. The gameplay is for the most part pretty standard first-person shooter fare of the era. You carry a maximum of 2 weapons at a time, throw grenades, and you have a recharging shield to protect you from damage. And there's a drivable vehicle for certain parts, the steam-powered Coyote Wagon, armed with a giant Gatling gun turret on the back. Any of this sound familiar? Some reviews of the time compared the game to Halo, and hell, there's even a Cortana-alike companion in the form of top Darkwatch agent Cassidy Sharp. None of this is an accident. Halo was directly cited by the developers as an influence, with the design goal intending to take that type of gameplay but shifted away from the typical science fiction or military scenarios that were common at the time. Senior designer Brent Disbrow was quoted as saying that the team expected it to stand on par with games like Halo 2. Breaking from the Halo influence, Jericho's vampirism gives him some flashy new supernatural abilities, like the Blood Sight, which highlights enemies and items of interest, while acting as a zoom function, or the very floaty double jump that lets him defy gravity and glide around the map. The game features somewhat of a morality system. Occasionally you'll find innocent bystanders that have been killed and I guess crucified or something, or random townspeople that are still alive and have been bitten and are on the verge of succumbing to the vampiric infection. You're given the choice to either free their soul, remove the infection, or further send their soul happily on the way to eternal damnation. Either way, doing enough of these rewards Jericho with extra powers categorized as good or evil. These can increase his attack damage, act as an extra shield, or one of my personal favorites, send out a blast of lightning that ricochets from enemy to enemy and takes them out. The idea of this is cool, but the whole morality system thing feels really superficial, and most of the time I ended up ignoring the moments to take advantage of that feature once I got a few useful powers. The game's ending section does feature an additional, somewhat big morality choice, which I won't go into in detail, but it does change the ending a decent bit. So, what does it all add up to? Does it stand toe-to-toe with Halo 2 like the developers hoped it would? Well, I'm gonna have to say no. It has some basic elements in common, but a lot of it feels really superficial and thrown in for the hell of it. Before I mention some vehicle combat, The Coyote Wagon is obviously trying to channel some Halo Warthog vibes, but it handles like pure ass, and it's only thrown in for one short mission and then never seen again. As if to say, see, we have a vehicle too! I've been avoiding spoilers, but I have to touch on this, and it's so early in the game that I feel alright about it, but skip to the timestamp below if you wish. And cool. So very early in the game, Cassidy is unceremoniously killed off by Lazarus, and she spends the rest of the game as a ghost, filling a Cortana-esque role with her voice constantly in Jericho's head guiding him along. It just feels really forced and unnecessary to me. But this is 2019, not 2005. And let me tell you something, partner. Around these parts, we look at games on their own merits, not compared to whatever was coming out at the time. So, how is it? Well, I don't know. I didn't have a bad time playing it, but I didn't have the greatest time either. Right off the bat, one thing that stood out to me is like, the pacing and coherency of the storytelling here is so off. Let's take a look at the intro to the game again and just let it speak for itself.
Trying to open the vault!
Hold it right there. Take it easy, partner. You got no clue what you're into. There's no gold in that vault. Oh, to hell with it. No! Sweet mercy! What have you done?
I don't mind a cold open, but give me some semblance of context here. I mean, who is Jericho? Why is he pulling off one last heist? And as you make your way through this sluggish tutorial level, you can tell something is clearly wrong with this train. And when he gets to the treasure, he's given very clear warning that he shouldn't blow it open. Now obviously if he just said, oh whoops, my bad, and went home, we wouldn't have a game, but still, it just doesn't flow well. And that's how I feel about the whole plot in general. Everything feels really rushed and incoherent. Even simple dialogue exchanges feel super rushed, like the voice actors were trying to spit their lines out as fast as possible. Maybe they were being paid by the hour and the casting director just wanted to save on payroll? Who knows? Oh, and good God, I almost forgot. The character of Tala, voiced by Rose McGowan. She's introduced midway through the game as another Darkwatch agent and secondary companion during some missions. And again, without spoiling too much, let's just say she has a questionable moral compass, to say the least. I feel like a lot of the characters in the game are severely lacking in terms of personality or character development, and I think Tala perhaps comes the closest to feeling like a developed character, but then there's this really cringy, romantic scene, which again, I'll just let it speak for itself.
Don't let Cartwright get you in a lather. He fears you. He should fear you. We're outlaws, Jericho. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of us even like it. I want you to have all of me.
Yeah. It's not the biggest deal, it's just pre-rendered cutscenes between missions mostly. But then there are other times during actual gameplay where the action just stops for a really quick and often pointless cutscene. There are times where I literally get pulled from the gameplay for a short in-engine cutscene, walk forward maybe 10 to 20 feet, and then I'm promptly given another cutscene, or worse, a loading screen. Again, pacing. There's a mantra in the world of writing, show, don't tell. Meaning, the author doesn't have to directly explain what's happening with a lot of exposition. In a medium like a video game, I feel like this is really easy to pull off. You don't need to constantly stop and tell me with a cutscene, Jericho, a mark of evil has appeared and you need to destroy it so enemies stop spawning. It's right there. I'm in the game world. I see it. Things like this just break the immersion and interrupt the flow of gameplay. And in Darkwatch, it gets really frustrating sometimes. That said, I can overlook a game being light on story if the gameplay is tight. And honestly, it's a mixed bag. First off, true to its name, Darkwatch is dark. Obviously that makes sense as an aesthetic choice, you know, vampires, zombies, nighttime and all, but sometimes it's really over the top to where things can be hard to see, and the game looks kind of bland visually most of the time, and it can also make navigating the levels kind of a pain, although granted it could be much worse. There are some brief moments of daylight, and while very short and fleeting, these moments are actually awesome. The desert color palette looks great, and as an added gameplay challenge, while in sunlight, Jericho's supernatural powers go away and he's a mere mortal like everybody else. No shields, no double jump. During these sections, you have to find a shadowy area if you want to use your powers. When I first got to these sections, I was like, oh great, this is going to be a pain, but no, it's actually an awesome dynamic that I wish was utilized more. It adds to the tension and forces you to use some strategy. Do you rush forward into battle guns blazing, or do you hang back in a safer zone with your shields up, picking enemies off with a ranged weapon? It's up to you, and it does a really great job of building up tension. That building of tension is something that when Darkwatch does it well, it goes all in and does it really well. Like most games, more difficult types of enemies are gradually introduced to you as the game progresses. In Darkwatch, they're sometimes introduced as mini-bosses in a level. A great example of this are the Banshees, vampire women that laugh maniacally at you as they float around and ruin your day. The first time I faced one, it was in a big arena-type area, and it took some effort to take her down. My relief and sense of accomplishment was short-lived when like a minute later I had to fight even more in an enclosed area. This is actually a great design decision because from then on, every time they spawn, I never lost that initial oh shit feeling. Unfortunately, not everything feels as well thought out, and there are some more fundamental problems I ran into. First off, the combat oftentimes feels clunky and unintuitive. I've never claimed to be the most skilled FPS player ever, but still, the hit detection just feels off no matter what I do. Whether or not I actually hit an enemy often feels like a game of chance. To get around this, I usually found myself using the shotgun, or using like the rapid fire mode on the pistols and aiming in the general direction enemies were coming from until everything died. Precision sniping with the range rifle is really luck of the draw. There are way too many moments where I knew I was zoomed dead on to an enemy's head, only to have them just like not react at all until the second or third shot. It just feels like my bullets are narrowly whizzing by their arms and legs, which is wild because they're not exactly what you'd call nimble. They don't move around like agents from the Matrix or anything like that. So it sounds like I'm mostly down about this game with more bad to say than good. But don't get me wrong, the experience overall wasn't terrible or even bad by any means. Just kind of lukewarm. If anything, I'm really just disappointed. Not in the game itself so much as what this could have developed into. There were actually plans to turn this into an entire franchise with different games focusing on the Darkwatch organization at different points in history. Darkwatch 2 was even in development for the PS3 and Xbox 360, but for whatever reason this never came to fruition. That's a damn shame too, because despite my criticism of the game, I think High Moon actually had a great foundation for a series. Cowboys and vampires have always had a solid place in pop culture, but if a sequel had come out sometime around 2010 or so, when everyone was being taken by storm by Red Dead Redemption or The Walking Dead on AMC, I think they could have had a smash hit on their hands. But alas, we'll never know. In the years since, High Moon is mostly focused on developing games based on other intellectual properties, namely 2008's The Bourne Conspiracy, the 2013 Deadpool game, and a few Transformers games. So, is Darkwatch worth your time? Yeah, kind of, I guess. Despite my criticism of the game, it does have some charm to it. And like I said before, this could have been a whole franchise. And if done right, it could have been like a big deal. But for whatever reason, this never happened. And, Darkwatch just stands all on its lonesome. And if nothing else, I think that makes it interesting as a historical artifact from the tail end of the original Xbox era. So for that reason, yeah, I think it's worth giving it a try. So, yes sir.
Yes!